Welcome to Indiana Sports Beat Radio, presented by Wow Food Group and Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
Know your role and shut your mouth, you jabroni!
Fires upfield into the end zone, and it's caught! Jelani Woods! Touchdown! INDY!
A 43-point night for Tyrese Halliburton.
How do you like that, partner?
Galloway drives all the way to the hole, throws it off, got it! And Indiana's got their first lead of this contest.
I mean, that's a goddamn Emmy winner right there.
Now, from the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios, here's your host, Jim Coyle.
Hello, everybody. Jim Coyle coming to you a little bit further north of the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios today. Still in New York for the Empire Classic as the Indiana Hoosiers will today take on the Louisville Cardinals. But before we get to that, we've got Greg Rakestraw with us from the ISB Sports Network, and he had a very, very busy weekend as well as the Indiana high school football playoffs continue and start to tighten. Greg, welcome aboard, first of all.
Thank you, my friend. And sorry, I'm like multitasking here as we're talking to you. Good to see you again, buddy.
You as well. I'm sure it was a very busy weekend. I have not been able to pay attention. I'll be honest with you. Were there any upsets? What happened over the weekend?
You know, I would say from a high school football standpoint, I think Crown Point beating Westfield be considered an upset, even though they were at home. It was a double overtime game. Crown Point jumped out to a 17-0 lead. I think anytime, especially in 6A, a team from outside of the Indianapolis area beats an Indy area team, that catches people's attention. We kind of had a similar situation last year where Carroll of Fort Wayne ended up making the state championship game by beating Hamilton Southeastern in the semi-state round. So that kind of gets your attention. Other than that, the games were relatively lopsided, with thankfully the exception of the game that I had with Ben Davis and Center Grove, just because those two teams were so equally matched. And I have been so fortunate to be on the call of those three Ben Davis victories, all by 3 points over Brownsburg, Cathedral, and Center Grove in the span of 4 weeks. And so, Jim, I likened it to, that's like being a heavyweight boxer in the 70s where you just beat Foreman, then you get Frazier. Now here's Ali, you got them too. And like Ken Norton is waiting, in the finale. That's kind of what the schedule has been like for Ben Davis. So it was, the Crown Point game is probably the biggest surprise of the group, but maybe the overarching surprise is that some of these games we thought would be a little bit closer weren't. The dominant teams kind of really came to the fore on Friday night.
Well, that's always good to see, as long as the games are fun and close, and that makes it even more exciting. So now what comes up this week?
So obviously the schedule is 1A, 3A, 5A in terms of Friday. So Lutheran and Adams Central literally have a trilogy going. They'll play for a third consecutive year. They'll both bump up to 2A next year, regardless of what happens in 3A at Chittard and Heritage Hills. They have played in state championship games before. Basically, when Chittard has been in 3A in the last decade, they've won it. If Chittard wins, it would be a 17th state championship for Chittard, which leads all schools. Again, regardless of the result, they will be in 4A next year. In terms of 5A, it's Decatur Central, back in a state final for the first time in a handful of years. Their second trip, I think it was 18 or 19 when they played against New Pal. And they will take on Fort Wayne Snyder. And Jim, Fort Wayne Snyder, I saw in week 1, they dispatched of Warren Central, who by Warren standards was pretty average this year, but for a 5A team would be really good. And so I told the folks in Fort Wayne, I said, if I think I had your first game, I might have your last game too, because I'll have that one on television. So that's the Friday night game. Then as far as Saturday is concerned, North Posey will take on Bishop Lures. North Posey, I got to double check the math on this, but at least in my 15, 20 years of doing high school football state finals on a regular basis, it's the Vikings' first trip to Lucas Oil Stadium, followed by a game I predicted about 3 or 4 months ago, East Central and Northwood playing each other in the 4A championship game. East Central has been as dominant in 4A this year as even more so than some of the great Roncalli teams that won 4A about 20 years ago, even more so than the Cathedral teams that won in 4A. East Central is a monster. They're going to 5A next year because of making back-to-back state championship games and the aforementioned 6A title game. And you want to see if all of those battles have any sort of cumulative effect on Ben Davis. You're also curious to see if they overlook Crown Point at all. On the flip side, I think for Crown Point, I think that the win was getting to Lucas Oil and getting downstate. We have not had a region team in the 6A championship game. This is the 12th year of having 6A football split off from 5A. So I'm curious to see just how good that 6A game will be, but it will be the standard great Thanksgiving weekend at Lucas Oil Stadium for both high school football fans across the state and for yours truly, because I'll have 4 games in the span of about 48 hours between 3 high school football games and the Indianapolis Colts come Sunday afternoon.
You got to rest that voice, man. Drink some hot tea and all of that good stuff.
Rarely have I been one that has had to invest in stuff like that, but I put a lot of mileage on the voice this year, especially in the month of November. So there may be some times for silent reflection that I will have during the course of this week to rest things up.
The Colts had the weekend off, I believe. Is that right?
Correct. So this was the bye week for the Colts, and the Colts are always usually at home over the state finals weekend, just because they're then always on the road the next weekend because of the Big Ten championship game, coming to Lucas Oil Stadium. So yes, Colts were off this week. As the late Joe Tiller would say, they played Brigham Young East. That's BYE for those of you that are not following, no longer paying attention. But it's the Tampa Bay Buccaneers that now come calling to Lucas Oil on Sunday afternoon.
That'll be fun and getting back and engaged in that. But, of course, it's nice to get away from it for a week for you right now, I'm sure.
It is. But most importantly, it's nice for everybody involved to get away from it, for a week. I think when the schedule comes out and you get your bye a little bit late, I think you're a little disappointed with it. But once you get to this point of the season, it's almost advantageous to you because in theory, you're going to be a little fresher than a lot of other teams, are going to be going into this. So, and again, the schedule makers continue to be kind to the Indianapolis Colts. There's no game on here that is a guaranteed win, but there's also no game that's a guaranteed loss. And the game that was looking like it was going to be the toughest of the 7 remaining for the Indianapolis Colts, obviously now dramatically changed because of the injury on Thursday night to Joe Burrow, because the Colts go play at the Bengals in a couple of weeks on December the 10th. So Steelers are on the schedule. Their offense has really been struggling. They lose to the Browns. Some of the teams the Colts have either beaten or been beaten by aren't looking so shabby like the Ravens and the Browns. The Colts right now are not the closest team to a playoff spot that's on the outside looking in. That's Buffalo. They're 6-5. The Colts would be in a tie for
a surprising
6-5.
Right,
so again, it just kind of gives you an idea that there's an opportunity here for this football team.
Who would have thought that Buffalo was going to be 6-5 right now?
No one. And again, they are the most schizophrenic Jekyll and Hyde team we have in the National Football League. And I realize the Jets are dealing with their own issues, but the Jets have been really good on defense. And the Bills put up 32 yesterday. The Bills good can be as good as any team in the National Football League. Problem is their floor seemingly is pretty low because they have been so hit and miss at times during the course of the season.
And have you added basketball to the schedule yet already?
So I've had a little bit of college basketball. I had Marian University. Obviously, Indiana Hoosier fans saw them in action in the exhibition game a couple of weeks ago. Their conference opener against Grace, on both the men's and women's side, was Saturday afternoon. You want to follow some small college teams. The Marian women are 5th in the nation. They returned their entire team from last year. They have a chance to win the NAIA national championship. On the flip side, Grace, who played Purdue in the exhibition season, Grace is number 2 in the nation, in the NAIA. They were quarterfinalists last year. They are ridiculously good. And they got a post in Elijah Malone, about 6'10" and about 260, can hit threes, great touch. He will play professionally somewhere, whether that's G League, overseas, whatever the case may be. He is a pro, which you don't often see at that level. From a high school standpoint, I'll be at Trinity Lutheran on Tuesday night, Tri-West on Wednesday night. So much for resting the voice. As far as the big matchups are concerned, for those of you, even though he has already made his college commitment, that likes to tune in and see Flory Badunga, the likely Indiana Mr. Basketball at every opportunity, our season opener on Channel 23, our first of 40 games that we'll have for you this season on My Indy TV, will be Westfield at Kokomo. That game has been up in the air heading into the weekend, and Westfield lost in the football semi-state. So they're going to play that game as scheduled on Saturday night. And then my kind of television opener for basketball, with that whole football thing getting in the way, Jim, will be a week from Tuesday when Crispus Attucks, who is one of the top teams in the state this year, plays at North Central.
Love hearing that name, Chris Pasadix, though. It just always brings back the memories of long ago, a program that has been successful from a long time back.
And Jim, to that point, they're playing in the Hall of Fame Classic this year, and that is always a very competitive field. Jack Benner of Brownstown Central, Brownsburg, even without Cannon catching, should be pretty good. They're going to be in the field. Kokomo will be there, and Chris Pasadix. And kind of a nod was given to Chris Pasadix. They have been good, and obviously, we're competing for 3A championships for a handful of years and won one in 2017. But this is as good as they have been in 4A. They made the sectional championship game last year. They returned most of their team intact. Senior Ron Rutland III is going to play at the University of Indianapolis. Desmond Briscoe is one of the highest-rated juniors in this class and really has started since day one as a freshman. This is the best team Chris Hawkins has had at Chris Pasadix. So if you like seeing Chris Pasadix, you're going to love us on ISC. I think we have them 9 times this year, 4 times at MIC opponents. They're playing in the Hall of Fame Classic. They're playing in the Sneakers for Santa event in Brownsburg. They're playing in the Forum Tip-Off Classic. We'll have them against Carmel at the end of the season. So we're going to kick it old school like it's the 50s, except we're going to bring it to you not in black and white, but in color on your television multiple times this year.
Make sure you're tuning into that or subscribing. Is there a subscription or is it?
So there is this monthly subscription available, and a couple of these games will be pay-per-view online. So again, if you got rabbit ears, if you got cable, you'll get Channel 23 and get those games for free. So games at North Central the 28th, at Lawrence Central December 12th, at Lawrence North December the 19th. Those will all be free in terms of over-the-air. Same with Carmel. Same with the second game of the Hall of Fame Classic. If not, you can look at a pay-per-view buy. And again, ISCSportsNetwork.com and all those games available too on the IHSAA Champions Network at IHSAATV.org.
For all of you spread out all over the place, want to keep track and following these schools and these tournaments, there's the place to do it. Thank you so much, Greg. I appreciate you.
All right, Jim, enjoy New York City, buddy.
I appreciate you. Back with more Indiana Sports Beat Radio. Don Fischer joins us right after this.
We'll be right back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Wow Food Group and Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate you.
Thank you, Greg.
See you, Jim. See you, John.
And remember, you're calling Don today.
Oh, I'm glad you reminded me of that.
I'll be right back.
Man, what is with this damn coffee maker? Well, at least I'll finally have coffee. Ow, that could have been bad. Johnny boy?
All right. If you want to go ahead and dial out Don.
Dial out Dawn. Don Fischer.
back in 40 seconds.
Hello.
Good morning, sir. It's Jim Coyle. How are you?
I'm all right. How you doing?
Good, sir. We have about 15 seconds, I think.
Yep, here we go.
For just $299. That's right. Play as many rounds as you like for just $299. That's better than a birdie. But you don't have to be a student to play at Eagle Point. Go online to set your tee time or call 812-824-4040. The Golf Club at Eagle Point in Bloomington.
This segment is brought to you by the Chop Shop, home of the Indiana football and men's basketball coaches shows. Now back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Wow Food Group and Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
Welcome back, everybody. Jim Coyle with you. Coming to you from the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios mobile unit as we're here in New York for the Empire Classic. Today, Indiana taking on a Louisville team, joined now by Don Fischer. Don, how are you, sir?
I'm doing good, Jimbo. How are you?
Fine. A lot of traveling for you. I know you had the game on Saturday afternoon with the football game. I was actually there for a quarter before I had to leave. And then you had to get to New York with the game yesterday and another one to follow today.
Yeah, it's busy. There's no question about that. But the busy part of the season is just about over with. And when November ends, we get back to kind of a normal schedule. But without doubt, this is a busy time of year. And it's a fun time of year in the sense of what you're getting able to do and what you're getting able to see. But at the same time, the results have not been as much of a happy note as we would like at this point. Obviously, the football team loses to Michigan State, then we come back and lose yesterday to UConn in unceremonious fashion, and especially in the latter stages of the ball game. So the two disappointments there, but at the same time, this is a program from a basketball perspective that's still young and has plenty of time to get better. From a football perspective, not so much because they've only got one game left on the season and they've got 3 wins. And the only way that they can end up with 4 and equal what they were able to do a year ago is to win that game against the Purdue Boilermakers in the old Oak and Bucket rivalry at West Lafayette on Saturday.
Yeah, on the road, no less, like you said. And it looked like they had that game. They were able to get the lead late. But once again, the defense, which had been a shining star for them earlier this year, just could not hold Michigan State and allow a late touchdown for Indiana to lose that game. That one had to be a heartbreaker.
Well, no question. And the biggest question you have is what has happened to a defense that looked so good against Penn State and Wisconsin, and then has just kind of fallen apart here in the last couple of weeks again. It's such a struggle. And when your offense has finally started to pick up the pace, because Indiana, maybe they didn't throw it tremendously well in the game against Michigan State, but they ran the ball really well in that contest. Not only Sorsby out of the backfield as the quarterback running it, but Trent Holland looked great. Josh Henderson looked great. They were able to move the ball on the ground and yet couldn't find a way to get the win in that contest. Now, I will grant you that there were a couple of controversial calls or lack of calls in the last 2 possessions of the ball game. One being a holding violation against Michigan State that was not called. It was quite obvious to everybody in the stadium. And then the same scenario when they were going down the field to try to win the ball game and had it down deep in Spartan territory and had a chance for a big pass play to complete itself and an obvious interference call by a defensive back that was not called again that allowed the pass to go down to the ground and incomplete. Those two calls, or lack of calls, I should say, were absolutely killers of this ball game. But you know what? You put yourself in the position where that could happen, and that was not necessary in this ball game because Michigan State wasn't that good, and the Spartans obviously played well enough to win the contest and didn't make the same kinds of mistakes. So costly to say the least.
Yeah, and one game left now. Purdue, the old Oak and Bucket is all they have to play for. you mentioned wondering what was happening. I wonder how hard is it going to be to keep a team up for a game, even though it's a rivalry game to the fans. I've said this before. Most of these guys, especially all these transfers, not from Indiana, haven't been here long enough. The rivalry, I'm not sure that the rivalry means much to them. And now you're at the end of the year, a bad year. That's a lot of negatives to hurdle.
There's no question. Especially late in the season here, when you were still fighting for the possibility of bowl eligibility, you lose a heartbreaking game to Illinois in another contest where the defense did not step up and played their worst game of the season, at least from the standpoint of being able to defend the pass. And then the inability to put any pressure on the quarterback on Saturday, with the exception of maybe one or two plays for Michigan State. That kid, I think he would have been rattled from the Indiana could have gotten to him, but there was no real pressure put on that quarterback throughout much of that contest. And no mistakes would have been made by their quarterback had Indiana been able to put the pressure on him, but he was allowed to sit back there and throw the ball where he wanted to most of the day.
Yeah, and I heard that when I was driving up to the airport. I heard you and Rhett giving that, and it's exactly what I was listening to. But so they move on next week to take on a Purdue team that has been not having a very good season at either. So, man, they really should change the name to the Toilet Bowl for this one.
Both these teams are scrambling here at the end of the year, trying to find a way to finish the season on a positive note. Obviously, Purdue will be playing on their home field at Raleigh, which is they'll have the opportunity to have their fan base there and cheering for them. It's Thanksgiving week, though. The students won't be there, probably like they wouldn't be at Indiana either if it was at Bloomington. But the fact of the matter is, right now, there's only pride to play for and the old Oaken Bucket. And you're right we talked about this before about how much these transfer portal guys know about the rivalry. If they buy into it, if they do, does it mean anything to them, that kind of thing. It certainly will to the guys that have been at Indiana for some time, but let's face it, the defense, for the most part, has got a bunch of new faces on it, with the exception of Aaron Casey and a couple of others. And so I don't know how these guys are going to perform in this matchup. I'm not a crystal ball guy, so I can tell you this. I don't make predictions, and I'm not about doing this one either.
Well, I've got another one for you that is going to be just as tough. Today, Louisville and Indiana you asked me 3 days ago, I would have confidently said, well, Indiana will easily win that game if it happens. But now, after watching Louisville give Texas all they wanted and more in a game that they should have won, really. They lose on a shot that is not just a last-second shot. This was a fadeaway jumper with a hand in the guy's face. They had to arc over it was great defense, and that was a tough shot. And they get it to go down, and Texas will move on today to play UConn, and while Indiana will battle with Louisville.
Yeah, and let's face it, Indiana's performance yesterday left a lot to be desired. The one thing I will say, at least for the first half, and I kind of thought that they played pretty strong defensively in the second half, or at least competed for quite some time in the second half, up until about the 6-minute mark of the game. I thought the defense for Indiana was stout. I didn't think that they played superstar status, but I thought that they played very this UConn ball club for a long time in this game. The problem was yesterday, two things, actually. They just got slaughtered on the boards. They got beat 44-22.
Yeah.
That's just unheard of. I haven't seen that disparity in rebounding in a long time at IU, and that has to change immediately. And then the other aspect of it tells you once again that this offense is not cohesive at this point. They only had 6 assists in this contest. So two things that you looked at in this game at the stat sheet and immediately struck you in the face were those two aspects, the assists and the rebounding. And that's got to change if this team is to have any success this year, to say the least.
Yeah, I think also there's another stat, second chance points. UConn had, I think, 16, and Indiana had a big goose egg.
Right.
It was some of these stats that you're talking about were just unbelievably lopsided, and you look at that and you're like, man, how does that happen? Because then Woody in the post game talks about still needing to do this or that. That's starting to get a little worrisome that these guys have been together as long as they have, and these things are just being seen and noticed. Whether it's Mackenzie and Baco not showing up yet, there's just a lot of things I know Hoosier fans are concerned about.
Well, there is concern. There's no question about that. And can Woody get it fixed? I think he can. I don't think there's any question that he can. But right now, the question mark is, do these guys buy into it? I know he had a long conversation with his basketball team after the game was over with, because we didn't get him on the air for our post-game show until almost we had to run out of time and basically wrap it up without his thoughts. But he came on just very briefly at the end, and obviously he was not pleased with what he saw out there. Certainly the assists, that and the rebounding stood out to him immediately. And again, he's got plenty of time. This is a long season. It's just gotten underway. We're 4 games into it at this point. It's a basketball team that has a lot of new faces on it, but they've been together for quite some time now. They've been together since the summer. And of course, they're going up against themselves. So that's kind of a misdirection, so to speak, because without doubt, it takes time when you start going up against other people other than yourselves. Because once you start playing against yourselves and you do it on a daily basis, you figure out what the other guy can do and what he can't. And then you've got an advantage one way or the other. So it takes time when you're going up against other people. And everybody that Indiana's faced up to this point has given them a game. I mean, every team that they've played has battled them. And this team has not responded in kind, in my opinion, and that might be the biggest aspect of what has to change if this team is to become as good as we think it can be.
Yeah, Kalel Ware had been kind of a stabilizing force up till this point. It was Malik Renew who had a tremendous game, and as a matter of fact, he's the only one that had a game for the most part yesterday. He 7 of 9, I think I remember him hitting on. He just did well until he fouled out. Kalel Ware, who had been that stabilizing force, hit 2 of 10 shots, and both of those were 3-point shots.
Yeah, it was different yesterday. There's no question about it. Renew was tremendous. He played his best basketball game of his career at Indiana, but he didn't rebound it very well. He only had 3 boards in the game. I should point out something as negative as that when you go 7 for 9 and you're leading scorer on your team with 18 against one of the best teams in the country. But that said, I do think that Indiana competed in the first half. I thought they really battled, kept the game close. And actually, they still had it down to between 7 and 10 points in the last, up to the 6-minute mark of the final half. Unfortunately, that game completely went away when Renew went out of the contest, and there was no answers that Indiana had offensively against this UConn ball club. And UConn's really good, question about it, but they got 2 new faces. There are actually 3 new faces on their basketball team. They only have the Klingen kid who came back, who was a reserve last year, the big guy, the 7'2" player. He wasn't a big factor in this ball game yesterday. The guys that were new transfers, Cam Spencer from Rutgers and Tristan Newton from East Carolina, both those guys played lights out in this contest. Caravan played okay for them, the guy that was there last year. But it was the 2 newcomers that had UConn playing at their best. And without doubt,
One of the things that I've noticed, and I know Woody talked about it, but the guard production has just been inconsistent or non-existent. Yesterday, Indiana was kind of handcuffed a little bit. Xavier gets a quick foul, second foul, third foul in the first half, and he played single-digit minutes, so they didn't have him for most of the game. You've got a freshman, Gabe Cupps, who has played very well, but he's still a freshman, and then it was like being thrown to the Lions at the Coliseum of sports, Madison Square Garden, rather. But they just not getting much from there. I don't know if it's the teams are quicker, but obviously there was a disparity at the guard position. Not only that, UConn's Tristan Newton led them in rebounding both in the first half. He had 7 in the second, and he had 11 for the game.
Oh,
yes, sir.
you cut out of me. That's why I didn't get the last thing that you said.
Well,
there.
let's talk about basically the lack of production from the guards, especially rebounding wise. UConn's leading rebounder was Tristan Newton. He had 11 for the game, 7 in the first half. Indiana not getting that help.
No, you're right. The guards aren't doing much. But again, Renew only had 3 boards in this contest. Ware did have 8, so he had 11 points and 8 rebounds. But nobody else. I mean, when you look at the score sheet and you only have 22 rebounds and they've got 44, you know you're in big city trouble there, without question. So rebounding is definitely a factor. There's no doubt. The assists yesterday, only 6 assists to 12 turnovers in the game, another astounding statistic. And of course, the second chance points, 16 to none. So, and here's the other aspect of it. Indiana's not hitting threes at all. 3 of 13 in this ball game. 7 of 22 for UConn. The 3-point shot right now is not only hurting Indiana, the 3-point shot that Indiana's not shooting is hurting Indiana, if you know what I'm saying.
Exactly. They've been outscored by 90 points so far this season from that behind the arc. That'll get you beat a lot.
Yep, no question. Those 3-pointers mean more than 2-pointers these days. If you know what I mean.
Every time. Don Fischer will let you go so you can start resting that voice for tonight's ball game.
No big deal. I appreciate it, guys. Thank you for having me.
You betcha. Don Fischer, the voice of the Indiana Hoosiers, joining us here on Indiana Sports Beat Radio as we're coming to you live from Manhattan. I can see the Staten Island ferry going away. Back with more right after this.
We'll be right back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Wow Food Group and Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
Holy moly macaroni. Coffee. Decaf. Crap.
Decaf.
It's like one regular and 3 decaf and then 2 teas. Yesterday I made tea, didn't know it was tea, and already put creamer in it.
What kind of hotel are you staying in? Just a chain, I'm guessing?
Yeah, it's just Hilton, but I'll be moving today closer to
The airport?
no, actually closer to the stadium. Friends of mine got this, and I'm like, boy, you're fired from getting hotel rooms.
Oh, so when I spoke with RC, he mentioned something. Are you staying near or with, not with him, but you know what I mean? Did he help you book one of these hotels?
Yeah, his cousin. Speaking of, no matter which, I've got to give them a shout out here in a minute.
Also, don't forget to shout out men's soccer.
Oh, yeah, I was thinking about that earlier. I'm like, well, all right, when am I going to be able to do that?
Good morning, Mr. Dopirak.
Good morning, John. And
Good.
Good morning, John, and good morning, Jim. How are you guys?
Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. I'm okay, man. How was your weekend?
Good. I actually came down to Bloomington, went to the football game. MJ wanted to do her whole crew did a tailgate. So,
Oh, wow.
I
Fun.
actually watched an IU football game from the stands.
It was a beautiful day.
It was a
Right,
gorgeous day.
Here
It
we
was
go,
not
guys.
good football, but it was a gorgeous day.
Catering.com. Garnish Catering is a proud partner of Wow Food Group. This segment is brought to you by Remax Advanced Realty, Indie Home Pros team by Cheryl Sizemore. Now back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Wow Food Group and Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
Welcome back, Indiana Sports Beat Radio here on this Monday, coming to you from the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios, New York City office. It's Jim Coyle, as always. Dustin Dopirak joining us now from the Indy Star, and I was asking him how your weekend went, and you actually went to Bloomington over the weekend.
I did. The first time in all my years that I actually watched the Indiana football game from the stands. My wife, as you guys probably know, is an IU grad, and her crew basically had a whole tailgate set up. So, so I came down. I wore neutral colors, and I did not cheer because I am still a journalist. Don't forget, and whatnot. But it was interesting. First off, it was a gorgeous day to watch football. And be in the stadium and everything like that. Obviously, not a huge crowd, which you would expect from two teams that are not going to bowl games in mid to late November. And obviously very, very IU way to lose the football game down the stretch. But it was an interesting experience. It was different being on the other side. I mean, I could see into the press box and think I used to be there like all the time. I hope you guys are doing good over there.
How glad I am that I am not up there.
Pretty much. Not exactly. I mean, I like the beat. I enjoy the IU beat, so I am not complaining. But it was different. It's nice to be able to just hang out and chill and whatnot. And I was in the I had to drive, so I wasn't like knocking them down during the game or anything like that. So that didn't change my experience too much as far as boozing up at an IU football game. So I didn't do that. But yeah, all the same, interesting. Obviously, I've seen Indiana have so many late game bad breaks. I have seen so many games, and not exactly the way that one did, because they're never exactly the same. But there's always a new wrinkle. There's always a new way for Indiana to lose a football game, and there was again. That's how it goes.
Yeah, I was only able to listen to that, and I was like just shaking my head, like, you gotta be kidding me, man! Because they took the lead. What did they take the lead with? Like 3 minutes to go.
I think it was a little bit more than that. Let me let me look it up as we're talking. But it maybe was a little bit more than that. Michigan State answers, with a touchdown, and Indiana had a chance to tie it with a field goal at the end. They were lining up for a 45-yarder. Then each team called timeout. So that includes Indiana. Indiana decided to go for it on 4th and 1, got it, but then moved back because of a intentional grounding penalty, which probably was not fair. But it led to the field goal being 50 yards as opposed to 45, and Sam Freeman missed from 50, and Indiana loses the football game. And that's just a very Indiana way of that happening.
Yeah, you can't. It's hard to put a game on a call, but because there are so many calls go on during the game and this and that and the other thing. But when it comes at the end and it's got that big spotlight on it, and it has such a bearing, Don was on with us earlier, and we just talked about it. I know that there was a big hold that was missed, and there was a pass interference call that sounded pretty blatantly obvious and was missed. Yep. So it is tough. You've got to get those calls, and sure. It's hard to believe that in today's technological world that those are missed.
Sure.
But they still are, and they change games, man.
Mm-hmm. No, they absolutely do. I mean, and obviously reviews are different. What you can review, what you can't review. You obviously can't go back and correct, say, well, that should have been a holding, that should have been a pass interference. You can't watch plays and find stuff that you missed the first time. And so that's where they get beat on a couple of those. The grounding was just an interesting scenario. I mean, it looked to me like somebody just ran the wrong route. And there should have been somebody in the vicinity of where the ball was, but there wasn't, because it might have been outside the tackle box too. I'm not even sure, but that probably was not fair. But all the same, you get a penalty, and you lose it. And to me, I think they just should have kicked it when they had it at 45 yards. I mean, they picked up. I get the idea of picking up a couple more yards, getting a few yards closer, and then being able to waste some time and make sure you don't. Make sure basically that Michigan State doesn't have enough time to answer and put the game away, as opposed to you sending it to overtime. But when you have the kick lined up and it's a makeable distance, I think you just take it. You just don't run the risk, because you are Indiana football. I mean, you have to presume that things can go.
What is the term? Pigs get fat, hogs get slaughtered?
Yeah, I did not know that was a thing. I guess that makes sense, but all the same, yeah, I mean, Indiana finds a way, and so take your opportunities when you get them. Don't mess around. Don't leave it up. Don't increase the possibility for fate, afflicting you, I guess, is the best way to put it.
Yeah, I just added another little nugget to the Dustin Dopirak lexicon. Yeah.
Yes,
pigs get fat, hogs get slaughtered.
There you go. All right, I'm gonna keep that one.
Being greedy. It's when you're trying to be greedy, and I get it. I mean, but I agree with you. He had already kicked a field goal in the game, right? A successful field goal. And I know it's been a little shaky. He has the leg, and he kicked a 50-yard+ yarder once this year. But when you got it at a 45-yard field goal in today's game, that's a pretty manageable field goal.
Sure. Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, I guess again, there were 17 seconds left. I mean, I think you obviously
nothing good can happen.
Oh, to you. I mean, the issue is, I mean, what I would say that probably was at least part of the problem there was that technically something else bad can happen.
That's what I'm saying. Nothing good can happen. What was the game? Wasn't that a few weeks back? Wasn't it a Miami game?
Oh yeah. When they did not sit, take
a knee. All they had to do was take a knee.
They didn't take a knee. Yeah, they ran the ball instead of taking a knee. They fumbled, and everything went sideways from there. Yeah, all they had to do was kneel the clock out. Georgia Tech couldn't stop it, but they ran the ball instead and fumbled and ended the game. Yeah, I mean, so the thing about it is, if you're Indiana, that cuts both ways. The idea of, well, nothing good can happen in this last 17 seconds. Any kind of chaos can happen. So, in theory, you want to keep the ball, and so not give it to Michigan State. But what ends up happening is you have the ball, and chaos on your side is what ultimately hurts you. And so that's the tough scenario, is that rather you're thinking, okay, if we keep it so that we kick it at the end, then we win. But you're Indiana, so you find a way to move backwards while you have the football. Again, probably wasn't fair. Probably wasn't a fair call. Happens all the same.
And there's no point getting into that discussion, but that's just another nail in the perceived coffin of Tom Allen.
Sure.
Which again, that's a discussion that
we've had many times. I mean, it's obviously there's no point in acting like we can't address it at all. But I mean, 3-8, again, it just comes down to, can you get the money and can you justify it? Well,
here's the thing. These things that I've learned, I realized this, and I use Jimbo Fisher as an example. He's going to get a check for $19.2 million within 90 days. After that, he's going to get like $7.9 million a year for however many years it takes to pay that. And again, that makes it, while it still hurts because it's still freaking dead money, it doesn't hurt as bad. For one, the Big Ten money is going to continue to increase. You can do it with donations, different ways, but it's still wasting money. No, you can't ignore that, because now not only that, you'll have to replenish that. You'll have to find someone different, and that's going to be does Indiana do that themselves? I've said that, hey, the one thing that if that comes to fruition, Indiana cannot be in charge of making of this hiring process. The hiring football coaches is not what they do well. So don't. There are plenty of services out there that can at least guide you in the right direction. Stop trying to make everything, this Indiana way thing.
I mean, the one thing, I don't know. Like, you've seen search firm hires before. It's not that.
And not that they're 100%.
No, I mean, like, the purpose of a search firm isn't to tell you how to hire a football coach or tell you who you want. The purpose of a search firm is to make sure that you can do it without somebody like me finding out that you're doing it. And it's to have all of your interviews someplace else, to minimize the amount of trackable flights that you've got coming into your into your area. Basically make sure that you're not playing it out in public. That's really the point of a search firm, is having somebody that you can talk to, that you can set up intermediaries, have them call your people, start it perhaps earlier. Actually, no, you can't do that. That's right. That would be if you found out that
I'll have your people call my people.
Exactly. Oh, you never even tell them that I'll have your people call your people. Your people just call their people, and so they can deny it and you can deny it. I mean, like, that's the point of a search.
Plausible
deniability, or actual deniability. You could say, well, I didn't call him, but you.
I learned that lesson the hard way.
Did you now?
Oh yes.
Okay. All right.
Well, when I had a story on Thad Matta.
Okay.
And
sure. There were intermediaries. Yeah.
Well, no, there was one thing that I said that was not accurate. I said that it was part of what it was a failed physical, but that was not the main part of the story, although that was not correct. But that gave the ability to deny.
Sure. Yeah.
And,
right. No,
so,
I got you.
Lesson learned hard.
Yeah. No, I got you. I remember that story. So no, I hear you. No, for real. So basically that's what that is. I mean, like, they're not gonna be able to hire anybody who takes sort of the Indiana football curse off of this hiring search. Like, Scott Dolson still has to make the decision. At the end of the day, like, no matter what goes down, Scott Dolson has to pick the guy. He has to know who he wants and how it's going to be, and they can have a search firm or they cannot have a search firm, but it's going to go the same. That can change the process. That can change kind of the specifics of how they get a hold of people or how they gauge interest, or just it probably would be a good idea for them to run a search firm, run it through a search firm, but still, Scott Dolson has to make the call. And so, if you don't think Scott Dolson knows what he's doing as far as picking football coaches, because he hasn't had to do it yet. Frankly, this would be his first football hire. Then, certainly he's been involved. Presumably he was involved in the Tom Allen decision. Presumably he was involved in Kevin Wilson, because he was generally Fred Glass's right-hand man. So, presumably Fred looked to him for advice on both of those deals. He still is, of the same Indiana track as far as picking people, and they're still going to be in the same situation there.
The sad point is that the best two coaches Indiana has hired in both of those positions in decades, since we're in basketball, since Bob Knight, Kelvin Sampson was the best hire. He was the best coach of the group that they've had up till now. And unfortunately, he broke the rules that were in effect then, changed the next year. But regardless of that, boom, away he goes. And that really sent Indiana on a roller coaster ride for basketball. Of course, football has always been a roller coaster ride. And Kevin Wilson was a great hire from a coaching standpoint. There were just other issues at play that made that not work out. So, man, if you had Kevin Wilson with Tom Allen, that's a winning combination. And I think that Indiana was about to be good in football and kept competitive good. And then they could have probably carried that forward, but that didn't happen. That gets derailed. And it seems like Indiana just always gets sideways.
Sure.
Even when they have it headed in the right direction, there's a 90-degree blindside.
Sure. I mean, in a strange way, this was actually the longest period of stability for IU football in a weird way of putting it. I mean, if you consider the Wilson and Allen regimes to be kind of part of the same continuum, because Allen did work for Wilson. I mean, like Brandon Shelby, has been an assistant coach.
I think this is his 14th season, maybe.
Yeah, since 2010. I mean, because in essence, it was part of same regime in a manner of addressing it. Certainly because he was hired by Wilson as part of Wilson's first staff, and he was on staff when Allen became defensive coordinator, so Allen kept him. And so the fact that was possible, that basically there was. Obviously Wilson got fired for other reasons, but it kept most of the staff otherwise, after that. And so in a manner of speaking, that's like the most stability Indiana's had in coaching in decades, going back to Mallory. So there's something to be said for that. I guess not too much because it's still Indiana football, but there were bowl games in there. For both head coaches, each of them I think went to 2.
I mean, it's hard to ignore. They were either a pick 6 or a Big Ten screw job away from playing in the Big Ten championship.
In a manner of speaking, obviously, 2020 was the year of screw jobs for all of us and everywhere, and that were not in our control. And obviously, you could argue in a whole bunch of different directions. And certainly, they lost the football game. That would have, you can argue whether or not rules were set in this place or whatever. They lost to Ohio State. At the end of the day, like the
and
team,
should not have.
The East won the football game between them, and all of 2020 was dealing with logic and scenarios that were not previously possible. So that was the world in 2020. And so basically everybody got it somewhere like that of, okay, what do you do if this happens? What do you do if that happens? Because it might actually happen this time. And so, I still get the Big Ten's argument that if Ohio State played its extra game and lost it, they would still win the Big Ten East. And Ohio State beat Indiana. But to that point, they were that close. Okay. They were within a game of being in the Big Ten championship. They had other opportunities. And so the ultimate point is this was a period of relative stability on Indiana's part. But it's coming to the point that you can't really keep this guy around. You're looking at a dead man walking scenario next year. If you're going to come off of either 3-9 or 4-8, whatever happens next week, you're going to be going into a scenario. They're going to have a hard time recruiting. They're going to have a hard time getting players.
And you don't want that pressure on the players. Like they would know
exactly. And I don't know. Yeah, exactly. But I don't even know if what's worse is I don't know if they'll have pressure. I don't know if they'll be under the thought that they can do anything about it. I think the more likely scenario is they will go into next year knowing that there's nothing they can do. There is, but there's going to be pressure, but it's like they would have to do something wild to keep his job. Like 5-7 is not going to cut it. And they're going to be in a position where they'll have less talent. They'll have a hard time, refilling spots. They're going to have transfers. So they're going to be in a tough position. And basically, it will look to all the world as Indiana is just not firing this guy because they can't afford $20 million.
And this is nothing. This is one that I take no joy in talking about because
he's a great person.
Yeah, and not that anything has been done or that won't even come out for I don't know when Indiana would make that announcement, but to me, there's no doubt it is going to happen now.
It's just tough to stack 3 seasons like this.
I saw a picture that someone sent me. It was a picture of Dustin and Witten standing next to each other, and they both had the same expression on their face, and it was not they were not smiling. Now that picture could have been taken anytime, anywhere. I get it, but it was on the football field, and I'm like, all right, I need to juxtapose
that in terms of
another picture of the stadium, which is half empty. I mean, you're only looking at a stadium that holds 52,000 people, while other Big Ten schools are filling with 100. We've got to take a break. We've got lots more coming up. Dustin Dopirak from the Indy Star with us here on Indiana Sports Beat Radio. I'm coming to you live from Lower Manhattan as I watch the Staten Island Ferry make its next voyage across the way. And actually, it's Shea Bryan and RC as they were up here this week, or for the game yesterday at least as well. Back with more right after this.
We'll be right back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Wow Food Group and Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
In the market.
Hey, Dustin, one point to that argument that I want to bring up and get your thoughts on. Do you think the Big Ten would have changed the rule if the roles were reversed and Indiana didn't meet the minimum requirement? Like they had let's say they beat Ohio State. But
if Indiana was undefeated,
but they were the team that had to cancel games because of COVID, and they didn't meet the minimum requirement. Do you think they would have flipped it for them or no?
I think the Big Ten would have done it. The point of doing it was getting a team in the playoff.
Yes.
So if Indiana was in position to be in the playoff, yes. That's I mean, like it's based on what would be in the best interest of the Big Ten. And what is in the best interest of the Big Ten is getting a team in the playoff. And if that's what it would have been required to get Indiana in the playoff, then yes, I think.
Now, if there was a path for Ohio State to win the Big Ten championship game and make the playoff still, which I don't know if there would have been. I don't know if they would have bent the rule because of TV ratings would have been higher for Ohio State to make the football playoff. So I don't know.
Yeah, I can't see. I mean, if Indiana would have beat Ohio State in a world in which Indiana beats Ohio State cannot get in the playoff because Indiana is. So I'm obviously that season was a wreck, a total complete wreck. And, especially on the Big Ten's end, but for everything that had happened for the Big Ten in particular, you have to remember just how much heat Kevin Warren got from initially canceling the season and getting a late start. If Indiana had played themselves into the playoff, so if they beat Ohio State and they run the table, and Indiana is their best hope of getting a playoff team, then yeah, Indiana would have got the benefit of the doubt. But I get the idea of you sure, like Ohio State is much more of the Big Ten's baby, but I think the real driving force to that is you have a team that could win it. And I think in some ways, even playing was part on, at all that season was part on the basis that Ohio State had a team that could win it.
Yeah.
Like they I think that was a driving force for why the Big Ten played. Or it wasn't the driving force. Certainly there was
about to put a show on.
But Ohio State had a good enough team that they looked at and said, like, if you don't play, you throw away a chance at this and you throw away a lot of money. And so, here's Justin Fields, like this guy's, because that was Fields' season, right? That was his last year, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes.
And so, yeah, they're like, this team is loaded. If you waste this season, then everybody else is going to play. You better.
We got 10 seconds.
Sure.
All right, here we go, guys. MyStonecrestLiving.com. That's MyStonecrestLiving.com for more details. This segment is brought to you by The Ugly Grouper. Now back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Wow Food Group and Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
Welcome back. Indiana Sports Beat Radio coming to you from the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios mobile unit in Lower Manhattan. Beautiful looking day out there in here in New York. Sun, nothing but a clear blue sky. It's when I don't get here often, but whenever I do, it is always cool to still try to do semi-touristy stuff, to be just walking around, if nothing else. Seeing the buildings, the iconic buildings. The Chrysler building has long been my favorite building for some reason. Just love that building. And then once I, from watching Winning Time, the series, HBO series, I realized Jerry Buss owned that building, and that was part of what he traded to get the Lakers.
That's wild. That's a wild story. I didn't know that.
Yeah, well, yeah, I only learned it through watching that series because he had to. And Jack Kent Cook, who used to own the Washington Redskins, that's who owned the Lakers then, and that's who he's making these. He owned a bunch of real estate somehow. Dr. Jerry Buss did, and so, but yeah, I was like, really, we're trading the Chrysler building for the Lakers. It was it's just funny. And then last night I was having a discussion with RC about famous actors that had gone to Indiana, and I was going down through the list, and then I was like, whoa, I was shocked there were some, but there was one that I remember having thought that there was because it was on their Wikipedia page, and that's Julia, I forget her last name, Garner, who played Ruth in Ozark.
Right.
And all of a sudden, but that is not true. She didn't go to Indiana, and then all of a sudden that was deleted from her Wikipedia page. But just some of the people I knew, Mike from Breaking Bad did, Kevin Kline, which people don't. That's one I didn't know. But S.C. Partha Markuson, I think is her name, but she was on Law and Order. It's just, I'm like, how are these actors coming from Indiana? Indiana is not an acting school. So it just shows you how those guys come from different places and different manners of finding things. But it was kind of crazy.
Yeah, no, there's so many stories that link back in New York. The history is so deep, and so like every time you're walking around there, you're just sort of blown away by what's there. It's just everything. You just feel like you're in the center of the universe. It is a different place than anywhere else in this country. It's just you feel all the history. You feel just like. I mean, there's no place like walking around in New York. I mean, I can just drift there and just stare in the air.
I'm telling you, and there was not one time I felt in danger in any way. There was not. There was not panhandling. I think we were
as much
walking
as you see in some other cities. Yeah.
Oh hell, not in Bloomington as much as in Bloomington.
Sure.
There was a walk by a place at 99-cent pizza, and I'm like going, I'm not really hungry, but how do you pass up?
You almost have to eat it just because it's just for the financial reasons.
Yeah, I'm like, well, it's a 99-cent slice. I mean,
I got to take this while I can get it. Well, it's an option.
And their deal was 2 slices and a can of soda for $3.
Yeah,
and I'm like, geez, how are they making money?
Just untouched by inflation? How did that work?
I just said I got to get a slice here, and we did. And there was a guy say, "Hey man, did you buy me a slice?" And I'm like, "Yeah, baby, I'm a big spender, big spender." Oh yeah,
exactly. If all it costs to make this man happy is give him a dollar, we can do that.
But yeah, but there was not, and because that struck me, I'm like going, man, if I was anywhere else, they'd be all over you, all over the place, and. It's not going on. That's not going on.
I mean, part of it is like people have been priced out of New York for so long that where like housing costs and other costs or whatever are, somewhat recently knocking other people out onto the streets. It's, New York, it happened so long ago because I mean, just like the idea of living anywhere in Manhattan, like the money is just so off the charts for what you have to pay for the tiniest of apartments. And so, like that's kind of already baked in. It's just A lot has been done to in New York, but it's just again, like, it is a different experience in other places, and part of it is because it is an expensive town to be in, and has been for a very, very long time. There's not a whole lot of territory there, and it is not cheap at all, one bit, and hasn't been for a long, long time.
Just quick, I don't want to waste this whole segment on this goofiness.
On the glory of New York City, because it is glorious. But yeah, let's talk
Laverne
about
Cox, who played on Orange is the New Black.
Mm-hmm.
She was the trans, but
Yes.
I knew who she was as soon as I saw her. I was like, oh my God, I didn't know that. Kevin Klein. Lee Majors, the $6 million man.
Yeah.
No idea that he went to IU. It's crazy.
That's why.
Jonathan Banks, which I knew. He played Mike in Breaking Bad and Better Call Saul. Great role. And Beverly Hills Cop, he was in that. A couple of actors I've never heard of. Matthew Daddario, and I'm like, I got nothing for you. How are you? How are you number 8 on this list? And this is like the most 100 of the most notable alumni. They've got Larry Bird in there, and he was there for all of 2 weeks.
You might as well claim him.
But they don't have Mick Jagger's dad, who has a master's degree from IU.
That's strange. You would think that yeah, crazy stuff.
Getting to some basketball. I know you're not covering IU on the beat, but
I did watch a little bit anyway.
Well, there was that was an ugly. It reminded me of the game in Las Vegas last year against Arizona. How there were some deer in the headlights. Although they were playing them tough, it looked kind of ugly to start the game. Both teams went through bad shooting patches, but Indiana, again, giving up the 3-point shot and not willing to shoot the 3-point shot. They got out rebounded by 1,000. It was, I mean, they've been out rebounded by every team that they played almost. And I'm talking about these mid-level MAC type teams. They're getting, they get out rebounded by who they play right before. They came up here. I forget, but they got out rebounded in that game.
Wright State, wasn't it?
Wright State.
Yeah.
But 40 to 20, whatever's 44, I think was the total. They gave up 44 rebounds. As a matter of fact, UConn almost had as many offensive rebounds with, I think they had 13, as Indiana did total rebounds.
They had 15. Well, they had 15 offensive rebounds, and Indiana had 18 defensive rebounds. So your offensive rebound percentage, if you're UConn, is nuts. If you're getting like 40% of your misses, that's a wild number.
And that's where the big number second chance points comes in. 16 to nothing.
Yeah, that's bad. That's drastic. Obviously,
it's almost overcomable.
You can't give up 16 second chance points and win. Basically, unless you're shooting the ball stupidly well. I mean, you can't have a 16-point differential. You can give up 16 second chance points if you're also getting 12 or whatever and overcome that. But if you've got a 16-point differential and you're not shooting lights out, you're not going to win. Or if you're getting crazy turnovers, there's got to be something else that balances that scale. And they did not have anything that did that. I mean, they went, IU shoots 17 of 45, I believe it is 17 of 45, 17 of 45. 3 of 13 for 3. I mean, obviously I'm just picking these games up in fits and starts. I mean, yesterday I watched most of the first half, and then picked it up for the last couple minutes, obviously because the Pacers played and I had to run over there for pregame and everything like that. So by the time I got to the arena, and I think it was pretty much closing down at that point, right before I went over to Carlisle's presser, and it just continues to stand out. Like they don't really know what they're doing on defense, and they don't have a lot of answers yet on offense. They don't know who can score. Xavier Johnson only plays 14 minutes, scores 4 points. Mackenzie Mbako plays 23, is 0 of 3 from the floor, scores 2 points. So Kellel Ware has a rough game, goes 2 for 10. The only two buckets are threes, and he has 5 free throws. you're in a position where you don't have a lot of guys who can get you points. I mean, Malik Reneau had a nice game, 7-9, 18, but that's most of your scoring. I mean, I think, Reneau and Galloway have 11 of your 17 field goals. The rest of the team has 6. So they get 11 field goals on 17 shots. The rest of the team is what? That comes out to, I think, like 6 of 28. So you're not getting a lot of balance scoring. You're not shooting the ball well at all from outside. You just don't have a lot of answers. I mean, obviously, there's a lot of time for this team to still figure itself out. But at this point, it does not really have a theory to the case.
Who's your daddy says, at this point, I don't care if McKenzie shoots 10 threes a game, but I need him to get going. Show me anything. I just want to see IU shoot the damn ball. You know what? I don't think you can sum it up any better than that. He is, I've been told by, Todd Leary says, hey, listen, this guy can shoot, but it's not translated into this game. And I don't know if his mind is so many different places because of the other parts of the game that then incorporate that, and which I'm starting to think that it is. And these guys are just not relaxed and not in a flow. And that's another thing you keep hearing and seeing is that it doesn't look, I don't know if it's consistency or they don't have a rhythm. But there's no flow. It's not seamless. It just looks really hodgepodge and choppy, and it's not good basketball. Yeah,
I mean, basically the criticisms that I've basically heard, and I caught a little bit of this yesterday, was just that he's lost on defense, that he just doesn't have a sense yet of where he's going, what he's doing. It certainly seems like Mike Woodson's come out and said that out loud. And when you don't know what you're doing on defense, that can really affect your confidence. Obviously, a lot of times offensive confidence, leads to a lack of defensive confidence. And certainly that tends to be what it is for young players. But on the flip side of that, if you really don't know what you're doing on defense and you feel totally lost out there, then that's a great way to, just lose your sense of place and feel like you know what you're doing. And it's a tough call because, I mean, if you're a coach and you know a guy that's just a liability on defense, can you put him out there and just say, don't even worry about what's going on out there. If you give us some buckets, we'll live with it. We just think you're the only guy that can score. Are you willing to do that at the college level? Certainly you can do that at the high school level and just say, I don't know, just get in somebody's way every once in a while, but we're going to give you the ball and forget about it. You can relax, on this end and we'll pick you up. If Mike Woodson's like, I don't think I can trust that. I get that, basically because like possessions are at a premium at the college level. You can't necessarily have anybody out there that's a liability. That's a total liability. So it's a tough spot. And when a guy's that talented, you're saying, okay, like you have to make the most out of that because otherwise I'm not sure the formula works for this group. I'm not sure there's enough firepower there if he doesn't become something quickly for them to be anything. So there is a argument to be made to just force feed it. Just find a way to keep him on the floor and get him the ball and try to get him to confidence somehow and just keep coaching it into him, but leaving him out there for more minutes. And just say, find a way to get this guy the ball, even whether it's earned or not. There's an argument there, but there's also an argument that, he's got to earn it. He's got to be able to defend. And if he can't defend, like you can't create an incentive scenario where you're not making these guys play defense. So that's the tough part of being a coach, especially at the college level when you're dealing with guys this young, is figuring out what's the best way to motivate and get the most out of guys and get the most out of a team. So it's definitely a test, for Woodson to figure out how to best find a way to elevate this guy and get what you're, what you've invested in him, just get the return on that because it's too good of a recruit, too good of a player to not be getting anything out of.
Absolutely. Brother, we've got the game against Harvard coming up in Indianapolis. I will bring that dang box of wine and add more to it and meet up with you there sometime.
Appreciate it, man. Drop me a line. Yep.
Thank you very much, my brother. And make sure you give Dustin Dopirak a follow from the Indy Star, following his content, especially on the Pacers beat. Stay tuned to that. Dustin, thank you very much, brother. We've got more coming up, including Nick Coffey joining us as Indiana takes on Louisville today. I think that game's at 4:00. John, is
4:30.
4:30. Is Nick up next?
He is coming up next. Yes.
All right. Back with more, including Nick Coffey, right after this.
We'll be right back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Wow Food Group and Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
So was he 950?
No, he's 10 o'clock. Remember, we're on the Monday schedule.
Oh, see. Jeez. And all right.
He said he'll be on in just a sec.
So is he someone I can take longer?
I would just try to stick to the 20 minutes.
I wasn't talking about double, the whole length. I'm just
take it however long as you feel necessary.
Kind of how the conversation's going.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, don't need to keep it to a specific amount.
I'm sitting in front of the daggone air conditioner.
Oh, yeah?
And it kicked on, and I'm like, oh, my God.
Because you can't, turn the heat on or anything instead.
I did that. Now I got to go turn it back down.
Can you not adjust the actual temperature, or can you just turn it on and off?
Well, I just turned it off. That felt a lot better than that damn air conditioner that was coming out. Nick Coffey from what?
Sports Talk 790.
When is he?
3 to 6 p.m. Hey, Nick, can you hear us?
Yes, sir. You hear me?
Sweet. Yes, sir. We got you.
Hey, Nick, Jim Coyle. How you doing, man?
Doing well. How are you?
Good. Thank you. Appreciate you for joining us.
Sure. No problem. No problem.
We still got about a minute till we're back from break.
Okay.
Is there much media? I wonder how much media from Louisville's up here. I haven't seen anyone.
I got it.
Nope. Did you just drop, Nick? Or did you say something?
Hello?
Oh, I got
Am I
you.
there? Oh, sorry. I guess do I have to keep this open? I guess.
Yeah, if you try to answer a message or anything, it may mute you.
Okay, gotcha. I'll just keep it active. But no, I've not seen anybody from the local market that is there. Now that you say that,
It blows my mind. It's the best game that they've played already. I mean, in 2 years, probably.
Oh yeah, I would say it was probably the best.
Maybe
best
3
performance they've put together.
All right, here we go.
Yeah,
guys. 10 seconds.
Okay, cool.
Chop Shop Steakhouse, Chop Shop Market and Table, a part of the Wow Food Group, is your butcher, baker, and fish house, no matter where you live.
This segment is brought to you by Reynolds Family Dentistry in Sellersburg. Now back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Wow Food Group and Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
Welcome back, Indiana Sports Beat Radio here on this Monday, coming to you from the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios mobile unit here in Lower Manhattan, as we're getting ready for the second installment of this year's Empire Classic. And yesterday's game between Louisville and Texas was just that, a classic that was won on a last-second Max Abmas fall-away, hand-in-your-face shot that I cannot believe went down. Louisville deserved to win that game, but Texas pulled it out. Joined now by Nick Coffey from Sports Talk 790 in Louisville. Every day, 3 to 6 p.m. For those of you that are down that way, make sure you tune him in. Been in that market for quite a while. Nick, thanks a lot for joining us.
No problem. Thank you for having me. I thought we'd get the Cards and the Hoosiers in this matchup today, but I was not expecting it to be coming off of a, I guess, impressive victory, especially if you're going to compare Louisville to what we've seen under Kenny Payne from start till now. That was their best performance, no doubt, yesterday against Texas, but a heartbreaker for sure. And Just the way things have gone, I wasn't so surprised to see that shot go in.
Yeah, that's it sounds like Indiana football logic right there. A lot of Indiana football fans. That's exactly what happened to them. They had a late lead against Michigan State on Saturday, and of course they gave that lead up. Same thing that happened to them against Illinois. But the Cardinals, how in the world does a team go from losing an exhibition to Kentucky Wesleyan to doing what they did yesterday? That I watched that entire game, and I'm like, I was waiting for the separation to happen, and it just didn't. Not only did it not, Louisville kept putting it to them, taking the lead back. It was a back and forth game, and I thought for sure they were going to win that damn thing.
Yeah, I think, I'd be a liar to say that I expected it to be that close towards the end, but I knew that Texas was going to want to play at a style that wouldn't benefit Louisville more so than Texas necessarily, but I think it would be beneficial to the way these players want to play. Not a whole lot of structure, and I don't mean to discredit either two coaches here when I say this, but it was kind of just like a run and gun, kind of like a pickup game. And Louisville was making tough shots. They were making tough shots. Louisville was as physical as I've seen them against anybody, and you got to consider Texas has a lot of talent. So I wish I had the answer as to how they can lose those games to teams you've never heard of and then come close against Texas. I think a lot of teams realize, hey, Louisville's there for the getting. If we slow it down and we make them really work defensively through the shot clock, we make them just try to, dare them to kind of beat us one-on-one. They'll be out of control, and other teams can do that. So it's encouraging, no doubt. But I actually think from start to finish of the Kenny Payne era, he's not had a loaded roster that is considered to be one of Louisville's best. But there's just no scenario they should be as bad as they've been, and I'm talking both last year and this year. So yesterday, again, it's encouraging, but I think it's also kind of a tell that, hey, I mean, if you can get that kind of result from these guys, how the heck is this team, so bad in these last couple of years?
Yeah, it was shocking to see, but it doesn't matter. Like sometimes things come together, I guess, when they finally come together, and that seems kind of like is what's happening. Louisville looked extremely good against the number 15 Texas team that is now 4-0, but Louisville now 2-2 with a chance of leaving New York with a winning record, which would be something they haven't had for quite some time.
Yeah, and I'm totally encouraged by what happened against Texas, and understand Indiana took a tough loss yesterday. And look, Louisville can win this game. I think Louisville's had the ability to beat a lot of teams they've lost to, but I want to see if they can come out for the second straight day and keep that energy, keep that intensity. Obviously, Texas has a lot of talent, but so does Indiana. I think Indiana has some guys kind of still learning what their role is going to be throughout the early stages of this season. But it should be a good game, no doubt. But if I'm being honest, I still, I'm going to trust the majority of the games I've seen under Kenny Payne rather than just basing it off of what we saw yesterday. But hey, maybe they can keep some momentum, and if they can get out of there going 1-1, it would be the most perplexing 3-2 record I can think of. But hey, 3-2 is better than 0-5, which I don't think was off the table once they got the season started with that loss to Kentucky Wesleyan.
Well, I haven't seen a spread yet, and I'm sure there is one, but I would be shocked if it's Indiana. It can't be by much. I
believe it's Indiana 7.5. At least when I first looked at it.
Now, see, to me, from what I saw yesterday, there is no way in hell I'm taking the 7, I'll take the 7.5 in Louisville on that bet. Indiana has not looked good in all year, even against the wins that they've had. Their offense has had no cohesion. In Mackenzie Mbako, the big 5-star recruit, has just not had this breakout game yet. Like Sky Clark playing incredibly well for Louisville yesterday. Indiana is not hitting the 3. They're not even taking the 3, and they are giving them up in droves. So I'm sure Louisville will try to feast on that, as most teams have. Indiana has given up. They've been outscored by 90 points, Nick, already this year, just behind the arc.
Yeah, that is one of the wildest stats I've seen so far in college basketball, just how many threes they've given up and how little they've made and even taken, as you've mentioned there. So, look, Indiana's still putting it together. They've got a lot of new pieces, and they're really replacing a guy that was sort of their program, their franchise for a long time, in Trace Jackson Davis. I still think the two most talented players in this game will probably be Malik Renew and Khalil Ware. I know, again, those guys are in that group as well in regards to still kind of putting it together. But, what you saw yesterday from Louisville, Jim, I'm telling you, man, it was not anything like we've seen for the last 2 years. So if they can keep doing it, great. But, maybe I'm just more programmed to, to be on the safe side and not get my hopes up. But I still think Indiana has the edge in talent. And I guess I'll ask you this, with that odd statistic in regards to three-point shooting, is it just not having guys that can knock it down? Is it just kind of a random early stat because you've only played, 4 games or so? Because I can't imagine Mike Woodson went into this season, thinking that his team would be this, this big of a disadvantage from behind the three-point line.
I think it's a combination of both. Mackenzie Mbako, I've been told by guys that I trust, Todd Leary being one of those, that this dude can shoot the ball. I mean, really shoot it. And I don't know if it's because his mind is so much on his defensive responsibilities, because if you're not playing defense, Mike Woodson puts your butt on the bench, as he did with Mackenzie Mbako. And one of their better three-point shooters so far has been Khalil Ware. Their big men have probably been the best three-point threat. Trey Galloway had a nice average last year, but that was on a small sample size. So he's not putting in the threes. CJ Gunn is someone off the bench that they had hoped to do that. He is not there yet. And, of course, the point guard, Xavier Johnson, is hit and miss as well. So, no, I think that they don't have that guy yet. Mackenzie Mbako was expected to be that guy, and it's not there. But they're not taking that many as well. And it's just amazing the lack of perimeter defense. Yesterday it started out better than it has been, but it's been tough. And I just don't think that they have the people that are confident to take and hit that shot right now. And they like to go through the paint with, you've got Khalil Ware and you've got Malik Renew, who can do some damage, especially together. Khalil Ware yesterday kind of disappeared. He was oddly 2 of 10. Here's an odd stat for you. The 7-footer was 2 of 10 from the field. Both of his makes were from behind the arc.
That's another odd stat here early on. I think from a guard's perspective in this game, I think Louisville's got some decent talent at that position. I mean, I really like the young kid Tyler Johnson, who has been kind of a spark plug for him. I know he comes off the bench, and I know both are probably considered lead guards, but Sky Clark and Tyler Johnson together on the floor, you just seem to have – there's more playmaking ability out there. So maybe that's where Louisville could have the edge here. I mean, I know obviously UConn is a much different test for the Hoosiers than Louisville will be today. But guard play was pretty impressive yesterday against Texas for Louisville. So, it's not that I've ever thought that these guys don't have the talent and ability, that we just not actually seen them go out there and do it. But, I would say from the Indiana perspective in regards to the three-point shooting, that's something I'm definitely going to be watching today. I'd be more concerned with the fact that they're not even taking those shots. I mean, I think that more so speaks to your point that they really don't believe they have guys that can just comfortably take those shots.
And not only that, they're getting, although they have Khalil Ware and Malik Renew playing really well, I think that also takes them away from the basket a lot. And Indiana's getting killed on the boards. It was 44 to 21 or 2 yesterday. So that's a crazy stat. But they also were out rebounded by Wright State, which I don't get that. I mean, I remember playing rec ball or whatever. Man, that ball goes up, you're just crashing. These guys don't crash. They don't seem. It's just weird to watch this team, because I'm not sure what it is that they do well yet. It's not been seen on the defensive side. Louisville definitely, to me, has an advantage at guard. They're much more athletic. You've got Sky Clark. You've got better shooters. So I don't know how that will relate to the paint area, if Indiana can make up that deficit. But I give Louisville the edge at the guards without question.
Yeah, and I mean, I would imagine that if Louisville wants to get this in an up and down game, maybe not a track meet necessarily, but just play at a faster pace, I feel like that's probably what Indiana wants to do as well, given their personnel.
Absolutely. They're a much better team when they're in transition. There's no question. Their half-court defense has just been kind of messy.
Yeah, I feel like maybe one of the key points for both of these coaches today is, obviously, you got to pick and choose your spots when you can score in transition, when you can get a breakout. But maybe making these teams do something in the half court is at this point both teams' weakness right now.
Yeah, ironically too, Mike Woodson had wanted to get this game set up, and Kenny Payne said, "No, I'm not. You know, my program's young, and what's made sense, and I want to get it going first." And well, it's like the NCAA; they took care of that for you. But look, this would be a big win for Louisville. Not that Louisville, and I don't want to act like Louisville is not what they are. They're a program of stature, but they, as Indiana did at one point years ago, they're going through a dip of the program, but it was definitely on the rise, and will be coming back. But this would be a huge win because of where it is, who it's over, kind of a rivalry type thing. And it would just, and how it's been going for Louisville. So this would be, to me, a big win, maybe the biggest win in a few years.
I think it'd be huge, easily the biggest win they've had in 3 years. And it would tell the fans, and I guess it would tell the team too, that, hey, we know that this team, they're not probably going to be putting together a run that gets them to the Final Four, or even the NCAA tournament maybe, but they are capable of being a lot better than what we've seen. And obviously it's one thing for the fans to know that, but I think these players, yesterday, I'm sure it was, being that competitive was probably something that should help them, but also, man, the way they lost, that was painful. So I actually think today is not only a big opportunity, but I feel like if you come up short, or let's just say you revert back, that's got to be crushing, knowing that you're just simply not putting together the performances that you're capable of. So it'll be tough for them to get a victory. I think the spread is spot on where it is. But no, you're right. This would be a big win this would be the biggest win of Kenny Payne's career, and it's not even close. I'm not even sure what the comparison would be, but what it could do as far as springboarding you for the rest of the year is monumental. And it's certainly not something anybody would have discussed on the Louisville side if you watch this team at any point against the exhibition opponents. The near loss to UMBC, they were down 22 in the second half to Chattanooga. So to see what they saw yesterday, I hope today's game is one where they come out with confidence, knowing they've got the ability to get what would be a huge win. It's just, I do kind of worry the psychological impact of these last 2 years for players. And a lot of these guys are somewhat new to this roster because they were brought in via the portal, and Kenny wanted to just completely overhaul the roster. But if you go up there and you come away 0-2, I don't think anybody'd be hugely shocked, but just to know that you could have won, and you've had such a bad couple of years at it. I think today's huge for a variety of reasons, not just because it would be a big win, but I think it could kind of swing you in a couple of different directions.
Especially recruiting. I think it would be huge for recruiting, national stage, all of that stuff. Maybe not so good for Indiana, but it would be huge for recruiting. Watching Sky Clark out there do that, those other recruits. He's the guy that bounced around before he finally landed at Louisville. But man, I'm sure they are more than happy to have him.
Yeah, no doubt about it. I look at this as a chance for Kenny Payne and his staff to, I still think a win today wouldn't make it to where they can just tell everybody to shut the heck up and they were wrong, because I still think there's just some inexcusable issues they've had up to this point. But this could at least get people to kind of take a deep breath. And you're right. It would be on a huge stage, right? It's November. Typically a lot of attention is on college football and the NFL this time of year. But when you've got feast week, as they call it, daytime games during the day of Thanksgiving week, there'll be more attention on it. And it's huge. And, I think we've known that the opportunity was there for both of these games. No matter who Louisville would have played today, this was going to be 2 days of, getting a chance to play on a national stage, more so than you do when you're playing on a stream only against, Chattanooga. But, at least now we're going in with the, realization that, hey, they may mess around and win. I hate to be so dejected about Louisville basketball, but you're right. It's a program that has a lot of tradition, a lot of pride. And it's just, sometimes I get ready for a show, whether it be a post-game show or my daily show, and think like, are we really doing this? Am I really talking Louisville basketball when they are in the midst of what I hope would be the worst thing they ever go through as a program? But with all that said, yesterday was something. It was a breath of fresh air just to see those guys out there competing, having fun. And to your point, you got to see that these guys do have some talent. Sky Clark, Trey White, the transfer from USC. Those are guys that I think a lot of teams would like to have on their roster.
Absolutely. Well, we're looking forward to it, and thank you so much for joining us, man. I appreciate it very. Been wanting to do this for a while, but make sure if you're in the Louisville, Southern Indiana area, Sports Talk 790, 3 to 6, Nick Coffey every day. Appreciate you, man.
Thank you, Jim. Take care.
You betcha. Hey, we've got more coming up here on Indiana Sports Beat Radio, and we're back with it right after this.
We'll be right back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Wow Food Group and Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
In the
Very nice.
Very good dude.
Very nice. Tell him thanks again, please.
I will. I'll send him a message.
I'm getting soul food advice from Fozan from Jordan. Come on. And then 5F said, man, what you know about soul food? Yes, the Chrysler building is my favorite building, man. Always has been. Oh, I said that already, didn't I? And then 5F says that Indiana has one of the best theater programs in the country. I didn't know that. I did not know that. Man, I don't know if I have time. The game's at 4. It's easy to get around on the subway. You just got to know where the hell you're going. How much time do I have?
2 minutes.
Oh, that's an eternity. Move to the library.
Don't forget to shout out men's soccer.
Yep, thank you. Hey, John, see if you can see where they play next and live.
I think they play Virginia. Let me see when they play. Let's see.
It is Virginia. I know that. You're right.
What can I find?
Which only makes it tougher.
Another ACC opponent.
Well, Virginia's probably
the
ranked.
ACC's got a lot of good programs in general in soccer.
Well, yeah, it's soccer's an East Coast game.
Mm-hmm. I don't know. I would just say it's a coastal game in general, whether it be the East or the West. If you live on the coast, you're probably playing soccer. Trust me, you got all the Latinos out in the West Coast.
Yeah, but think about the teams. Just look at the teams.
Well, maybe in college soccer. I guess I know. Okay, so they played Virginia Sunday at 1 p.m.
Oh, wow. They get a week off.
Well, because they're back. Well, I guess.
This game, you win this game, you go to the College Cup.
No, 2 games. You have to win 2 games for the
Who
College
they play
Cup
after that?
I'll have to look at the bracket, but we can discuss.
Damn. There's not 64 teams in that thing to start it, are there?
I don't think there's 64. I think it's like 40 something. All right, here we go. Because there's teams that get buys.
Point. Go online to set your tee time or call 812-824-4040. The Golf Club at Eagle Point in Bloomington.
This segment is brought to you by Bubba's 33 in Clarksville and Evansville.
NPR impersonation.
We like it.
What was I getting ready to say?
Men's soccer.
Yeah, I'm going to talk about that, but at first I want to talk about Fozan says if I have time, then I need to go to Harlem to the Upper East Side between, I'm going to have to write that down, 118th and 121st for some great soul food, which I'm all about great food, period. And I love experiencing new food. So I will try that. Very, what do you say? What do you call it? New Orleans something fusion. Yeah. Sounds delicious. Sounds great. I'll try that, Fozan. Thank you, brother. Appreciate you. Derek says that Mackenzie Mbako reminds him of Noah Vonleh and his going to do my own thing attitude. I'm not sure if it's that or, like I said, if it's still learning. It could be. I don't know. We'll have to continue to watch that. But, I want to shout out first, again, RC and Brian. Thank you very much. for the studio accommodations and fun weekend. Or not weekend. It wasn't really. That's the one thing. This is long and a lot of walking. Even using the subway a lot. You just do a lot of walking. But Indiana showed up and showed out. I did a pregame show yesterday from Mustang Harry's, where the IU Alumni Association had an event, and it was a line out the door full of IU people, and great. It was fun. What a fun show! So I can't wait to have an excuse to do that again. The pregame was fortunate enough that Clayton Anderson was sitting right next to me, and I didn't even know it. I didn't recognize him. He's wearing this Indy hat, and you just got it. He's just sitting there, and then somebody happened to say something, and I looked at him. I'm like, dude, what are you doing? Come over here. So he was kind enough to join us for a great segment on there. So make sure you go back and watch that. And then I just give him the mic, say, hey, I got to go find somebody to take over. And then he does another great segment. So check that out. Then on the post-game show, the best action comes in the very beginning when I'm starting the show. And John, you'll have to go back and watch this. You'll get the humor from it. May need to even do some editing maybe. But as I'm starting the show and into my opening, and I didn't care about UConn fans and all that, but it happened to be a UConn fan. Just kind of sticks his face like right into the microphone and yells something, which I don't even hear what it is, but I take my hand and grab him by the face and give him a nice little stiff arm. He didn't like that. And I could hear him talking to me in my ear while I was going on with the show.
So he's a heckler, your first opposing team heckler.
He wasn't a heckler. He was just trying to, one of those people that tries to get on TV or whatever. And if they were behind me and do that stuff and just waving, I don't care. They can yell Huskies or whatever. Hey, cool. They should celebrate. But he stuck his face right in front of me and onto the microphone. And that was just a little bit more than I was prepared to take. So give him a nice little stiff arm. And he didn't like, you don't have to put your hands on me. And I'm like, oh, don't have to put your hands you put your face near my hands. But that's just in my bubble. Howie's now talking about Blazing Saddles. Gene Wilder, Blazing Saddles scene voice, looking forward to a day when they play team ball, set screens, reverse the ball, make it hard on defense, take smart shots. Well, he says not under Woodson. I've got to say that, and far be it for me to question a basketball coach. That is not my forte. And I'm not the one that has spent 24 years in the NBA coaching and another decade or so playing. But I do wonder a lot what is how it's being structured, because you're still not seeing any cohesiveness. It looks to me that as much as the talk was to be a faster paced NBA style offense, not seeing that. I'm seeing pretty much what we saw last year, slow. And Coach Woodson talks about moving the ball up the floor slowly. I'm like, well, why is that? Most coaches that would take one time and you tell them or out they come. And you do some ripping and you get them back in there and say, now push the daggone ball up the floor. I don't understand a lot of things. And why are they not rebounding? How that's basics 101. Free throw shooting, they've been much better at all of a sudden. So they've got that going for them, but not incorporating the 3-point shot. And that falls back on the coach for the system that you're running. I don't know if it's not set up to provide the shots or if the players are not moving quick enough and making the right decisions to provide those shots. It's one of those That's part of the equation. You're either not making it happen, or it's not designed to happen, and it just happens when it does. Definitely, it has not been a design in this offense. You can tell, because you watch other teams, virtually every team that IU has played, and it's not that it is the number one component. Now, some of those lower ranked early season teams that Indiana played, it definitely was, and worked well, because Indiana can't guard the three very well either. That's another problem. They don't know what they want to do. You've got Kalel Ware and Malik Renew both playing wonderfully, but what is their role? Is it outside? Is it inside? Like I said, Kalel Ware was 2 of 10 yesterday. Both of those were threes. Did not hit a single 2-point shot, although he has been playing very, very well this year. Malik Renew played extraordinarily well, but didn't get a rebound. So the guards, Xavier, I don't know if his injury affected him yesterday. It probably did, but being slower, getting the fouls, man, that I knew that Indiana was in grave trouble the minute he picked up that second foul. And to get a third foul, I was, woo. It was bad news from that point forth. Gabe Cupps, who has played well, I said this on the post-game show with Todd, that he still has learning to do, number one. Number two, he's not playing against guys that are just fresh out of high school. They were playing against the reigning national champion, but there's a hell of a lot more of that coming. They still have not played the best team they're going to play in Kansas. Athletes, faster, stronger. They know what the hell they're doing. So, but I want to make sure that we talk about the soccer team and congratulate Coach Todd Yeagley, who is, I think I've said this and I'll say it again. He's one of the best coaches I've had the fortune to be around. Indiana wins consistently in soccer because that is the culture. It is a culture of winning. Every day in every practice, everything they do is geared towards winning. And it works, and it has worked. They're going to their 9th consecutive Sweet 16 in soccer. Okay. This is their 37th consecutive NCAA appearance. They've been to 22 of, I think, 50 college cups. It's staggering. Those are staggering numbers. No matter how good you are, the teams that get knocked off in the turn, to sustain that kind of excellence, that is culture. And by that, I mean, it's a system. You get the players that you need to do the things you need, and you have them do that in practice, and that carries over to the match. Indiana is always hardened and toughened by tournament time, obviously with the success that I just talked about with the numbers, and they deserve a lot more attention than they get. But if they can, man, they have a tough row to hoe with their next challenge, taking on a Virginia team that will be on the road as well. Is that at Virginia, John? I know that since they're the lower seeded team, they'll definitely be.
Yeah, the higher seeded team hosts up until the College Cup, which will be not this weekend, but the following weekend.
And are you sure that if Indiana beat Virginia, they would have another game to play?
Yeah, so this is the Sweet 16. The College Cup is it's like the Final Four of soccer.
That's right. I just said the Sweet 16. That's right. So Indiana is going to be on the road. They will have to do this the hard way. And I'd have to go back and look. Other than their first game, I don't know how many times they've made it to the College Cup on the road, via the road that much. It might have happened before, but it is a very, very, but they did it. They went to Wake Forest and did it. And in exciting fashion. They never led that game until that overtime goal came. That was their first lead in that match, but they never went away. They never stopped. They kept coming. And man, I want them to get to Louisville so badly. That would be crazy cool. That would be, the fans would just, man, Lynn Stadium would be taken over. And that's another thing you got to give a shout out to the IU basketball fans. They traveled, and I finally had, before the game, I was asking on the pregame show, I did talk to some UConn fans and ask them, so what do you think about the game today? I said, what do you think about the presence? You think it's going to be mostly UConn? Oh, yeah, it's going to be 3-1 UConn. Yeah. And I'm like, I don't know. I said, I kind of thought that last year when I went to Las Vegas and Indiana played Arizona, but it ended up being 80-20. He's like, yeah, well, we'll see. And then afterwards, that was one of the things that when I talked to a couple of people, they were, wow, there were more Indiana fans than anybody. And after the Indiana UConn game, I was busy doing stuff, so I didn't get to see the stands, but I heard the stands were, half empty with the Indiana fans leaving, the UConn fans leaving, Louisville not having had success here of late, so their following is not following. Which I think Indiana has followers no matter what, but it definitely grows when you win. Texas, obviously, not a basketball school. I have not seen very, very few Texas fans. I haven't seen a ton of Louisville fans. I'm sure more will come out of the woodwork today to maybe try to get some afternoon tickets to that game, but that was a great environment. Again, of course, the Mecca of all sports, the Coliseum, I call it today's Coliseum. It is just that. It is where all things happen. And doesn't matter if it's MMA, boxing, basketball, hockey. Man, it's such a cool environment. I should have sent this picture that I took, John, yesterday from my vantage point. It was awesome. I just love being in this building. But it was definitely a fun day. And hold on and John Boy, take over for a second. I've got to tell room service to go away.
Sure, that's fine. Yeah, so I know we've been talking about soccer, but I know we've got the Louisville matchup tonight. Those of you who may not know, I work with the guest we just had on, Nick Coffey, who covers Louisville sports, down in their market. And it's interesting. I feel like the conversation we just had, Jim, with Nick about the matchup, neither side feels confident about tonight's game, and for different reasons. Obviously, Louisville may have had that,
which is very funny, which is very ironic.
Yes,
a great point, and it's very ironic.
Yeah, and obviously Indiana, you would think would feel confident in a game like this, but after seeing what Louisville did against Texas, they haven't played that competitively with a team of that caliber under the Kenny Payne regime. So not that Indiana needs to be worried. If Indiana comes out and plays the game that they want to play,
well, they should. Yes, they should be worried because they don't play. They haven't played with that. Louisville played with passion. Louisville tried to win that game so hard. They tried so hard to win that game, and probably should have. I still can't believe that shot fell.
If Indiana comes out and plays lackadaisical, or however you say that word, lackadaisical, they will lose this game. They will lose this game if they don't play to their potential. You need more than just Khalil Ware and Malik Renew. One, if not two, of your guards needs to be a major contributor tonight. Not that you should need your absolute best performance from everybody, but if you want to have a positive thought about this team heading into the rest of the slate, the non-conference slate and beyond, Indiana needs to put together a solid performance, and they have not done that yet this year.
I'm looking at
1 minute.
an 8-point spread right now. So that's a little surprising. But hey, big thanks to everybody today. Of course, Greg Rakestraw from the ISC Sports Network, as always, starting off our Monday. Don Fischer, the voice of the Hoosiers, whom he will be on the call tonight. If you're not watching it on TV, or you can do the, turn up the radio deal as well. Let's see. Dustin Dopirak, of course, from the Indy Star, and Nick Coffey from Sports Talk 790 in Louisville. Make sure you tune him in if getting a chance as well. Big thanks to RC and Brian again. Thanks to you guys. Without you, we have no reason to be here until we'll be back tonight for the post-game show after the Indiana-Louisville game. Thanks to John, the producer, for keeping us between the white lines. Until tomorrow, till tonight, I'm Jim Coyle. I will see you on the radio.
Thanks for listening to Indiana Sports Beat Radio. Be sure to subscribe to our YouTube page for more clips and team coverage of Indiana basketball, football, and more. You can also find full episodes and tons of other content on thehoosier.com. We'll see you next time for another edition of Indiana Sports Beat Radio.